We have everyone.
We do. Okay, we are now live streaming on our YouTube page.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Darlene Anjikana, and I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Sioux OPP Detachment Board meeting of August the 8th this afternoon. So we're 1A on the agenda. Now 1B, attendance, motions to excuse, if any.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe everyone who is supposed to be here is here, so we don't need any motions to excuse today.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Now we'll just go on to number 2. I don't know who's going to do this. Land acknowledgement.
I'll be happy to do that, Darlene.
Okay. Thank you.
As we start our meeting here in Sioux, we acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Lac Sioux First Nation, and in Sioux, Pickle Lake. You know, Darlene, John, Bob, you could confirm for me. Are you in Treaty 3, the area of Treaty 3?
I'm not really sure. I don't happen to John. He was
Yeah, I don't know what our treaty number is.
Okay, so in Sioux Lookout, we're in the area of Treaty 3, and in Sioux Lookout, Pickle Lake area, we are also serve many people who are come from Treaties 5 and 9 of the Anishinaabe Nation. And we acknowledge that those people are a significant part of the service area of our two municipalities.
All right. If you're Pickle Lake, probably most likely in Treaty 9.
Treaty 9, okay.
Then,
Thanks, Tony.
yeah. Yeah. And then Treaty 5 is kind of west, northwest,
Yes.
around Sandy Lake area.
I think
Yeah.
Sandy and maybe Pecantchicum, I'm not sure.
Or Deer Lake.
Deer Lake, yeah. There's just a corner of it that comes in from Manitoba into Ontario, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good to know. Okay. We'll move on to number 3, the approval of the agenda. And 3A, introduction of amendments to the agenda. So are there any amendments from anybody?
Nothing from staff. Not sure if any of the members have anything.
No.
Nothing here.
thing from Pickle Lake here.
Okay. All right. Then
Chair-
we shall move on. Yes.
Chair, I'll just correct that. I'm looking at the treaty map right now, and we'll tell you that Pickle Lake is in Treaty 9.
Yeah.
And then there's Treaty 9A, which is really north of that. And Deer Lake, Sandy Lake, Poplar Hill, and Pecantchicum are the communities that are in Treaty 5 to the west.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to 3B then. We need a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Since there were no amendments, who wants to move? Mayor Doug will move it. Seconder Bob? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Thank you. Okay. All right, and show of hands. Everybody agrees? Yes. Okay. All right. So we'll move on to number 4 now, declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any? No? Oh, that's been- Okay, great. Okay, so none. We'll move on to number 5 now, the adoption of the minutes from June 27th, 2024. 5A. 5A, errors or omissions on them? Anybody? Did anybody notice anything? Okay, they look all right to me too. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so there were no errors or omissions. Okay, 5B, motion to approve the minutes as presented or amended. As presented, I guess. So again, we need a mover,
I'll
seconder.
move.
Okay, Bob will move and seconded by,
Second.
sorry, John. Sorry. Thank you. And show of hands, everybody in agreement? Yeah. All in favor. Okay. Number 6, we'll do number 6, delegations and presentations. It says there are none. So we'll move to number 7. Items for discussions, and 7A is the staff report. Attendance at a joint meeting, Association of Police Service Board Zone 1 and Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, OACP in Thunder Bay, September 10th to 11th, 2024. So who wants to lead this discussion? Yes, Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an opportunity for some training, networking, information gathering. So the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, they do have an annual conference. We did miss that for this year. It's something that the board may wish to consider for next year. They also have divided the province up into zones, and we're part of Zone 1, sort of the Northwestern Ontario catchment area. And so the zones also have meetings. And so Zone 1, which is what we're a part of, does have a meeting coming up September 10th and 11th in Thunder Bay. The board has budgeted for travel and attendance at training opportunities. If there's an interest in anyone from the board attending, we've included a bit of a chart there that kind of outlines what the cost would be if we send one member or 2 members, and those costs range between about $2,200 and $2,400. So if there's an interest in anyone attending from the board, the motion that we have for the board's consideration reads that the Sioux OPP Detachment Board authorizes blank to attend the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, OAPSB Zone 1 meeting, September 10th and 11th, 2024, Thunder Bay, with the necessary expenses allowed. So I'll turn it back over to the board for discussion on this item.
Okay, all right. So maybe one from Sioux and one from Pickle Lake. Who would be interested in going? Yes, Mayor?
Yeah, I'm interested in going, Darlene. I've been tempted to go to the ones in Southern Ontario, but they're all the timing and the amount of time and the cost. And I would do my usual family stay, which takes out some of the cost of, it's $50 per day, which covers
Yeah.
room and meals. So
Private accommodation. Yeah. Okay. And Bob, were you interested in attending?
Yeah, I probably can do unless John wants to go.
No, I'm busy those dates, so
Yeah, I
if you're
figured
willing to go.
that's why I volunteered. So
Okay. That sounds good. That's
Great.
fine with me. Yeah. So Mayor
Excellent.
Doug will go and Bob will go to
Great.
the meeting on September 10th and 11th. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Could we have a motion just to approve that as well, just
Oh.
so we have that for the minutes?
Okay. Motion to approve Bob and Mayor Doug to attend the September 10th and 11th meeting OAPS. I dropped. Yeah, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and the OAPSB meeting in Thunder Bay. So attending will be Mayor Doug Lawrence of Sioux and Bob Rasmussen of Pickle Lake. So who wants to move that one? Move this motion?
I can move it.
And John will move it. And seconder, I'll second it. Okay. Okay. And next item for discussion, 7B, review and approval of Sioux Detachment Board rules and procedures. That's quite a lengthy, printing part. I didn't get through it all. Tell you the truth. But I mean, there's different sections of it. It is rules
Yes.
and procedures. So then there's the administration, communications, information technology, and then the meetings. I guess we would really have to know the meetings, local policies, everything. Oh yeah, there's miscellaneous and the rules and procedures.
Chair,
Yeah.
Sheriff, I mean, I think that Brian's quite prepared to lead us through this. Like lambs to the slaughter, he'll take us there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mayor Lawrence, and thank you, Chair. So yes, we certainly recognize that that was a lot of information that everyone got a week ago, you know, so we understand if there hasn't been time for everyone to get through everything. I think probably what I'll do is start going through just sort of each section, and if anyone has any comments, questions, concerns, you know, the board can discuss that and we can provide input and feedback. If there are no comments, questions, or concerns, then I'll just move along to the next one. If we get to the point where I can say, oh, you know what, none of us have had a chance to look at this one yet, then maybe we'll sort of stop at that point and defer the rest. You know, we don't want to force the board into, despite what the mayor said, I don't want to lead you to the slaughter. I want to make sure if you're being led there, that you're doing so in a very informed way. As you probably had gleaned from the report, the Community Safety and Policing Act requires that detachment boards adopt rules and procedures. These can be described as inward-looking procedures in that they specify how the board will operate. And so the board also has the authority to adopt local policies. So in contract, these are outward-looking policies that address how certain policing matters will be dealt with. One thing to note is that any local policies that we develop that the board develops can't conflict with any other policing legislation. So we have put together the rules and procedures, or RAP, as we call it for short, and these will assist with the board in sort of operationalizing how it does things. There are other rules and procedures that may be required, and we will bring them forward as time and staff resources permit. Also, given that this is all very new, the intent would be to sort of review all this again next spring after we've had, 3/4 of a year or so to work with the rules and procedures. And if anything needs to be adjusted, we can do it at that time. If there's any serious issues with the rules and procedures that we miss, when we adopt them, of course, they can be amended at any time. It doesn't have to be next spring. It can be sooner than that, but that would sort of be a reasonable target to set in terms of looking at them again. So having said all that, and again, I just want to acknowledge Mary's assistance in doing most of the heavy lifting on this piece of work as well. It's been very much appreciated, and I'm sure the board feels that way as well. It's a large body of work to undertake, and we're making our way. So the beginning is just sort of the cover page, rules and procedures as required under section 46. The Sioux Detachment, it lists the communities that the detachment serves. Table of contents will be added once we get everything finalized. The first few pages here are sort of boilerplate stuff that is sort of taken, a lot of it is taken from the Act directly, or from the regulations established under the Act. So we look at board composition. We include the principles of civilian police governance and oversight. That's also taken from the Act. The reasons for it, declaration of principles, again, which is coming from the Act. And this is all really just to sort of set the stage for all the rules and procedures that follow. There's a section in here about what the Act says is adequate and effective policing. And we list the various regulations that are pertinent, especially for the board at this time. We're all still working through the nuances of the detachment board not being a local board under the Municipal Act or being an institution under the Municipal Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So there's still a bit of a gray area there. Our understanding right now is that, according to the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the detachment boards are neither of those that are defined by legislation. So we're a little bit in a gray area when it comes to the legal status of the board, and we're all continuing to work through that and figure that out. What they have clarified for us is that the board is a separate and distinct legal entity from the communities it serves. And so that's why we've been doing these things. And at the last meeting, we did the partnership agreement and we recommended back to our respective councils for approval. Same with the budget or estimates, and so on and so forth. So while the board exists to provide civilian input into policing in the catchment area, the board does not directly direct policing, but does have the opportunity to provide input. So there we go. There's a number of definitions in this section, so that when these words are used throughout the rules and procedures, there's common definitions where applicable. Of course, there's always that section about scope, applicability, and severability. Again, a lot of boilerplate stuff. We've included the roles and responsibilities as taken from the learning modules that were completed by the board members in advance of the first meeting. So that's sort of the opening section. I'll be much quicker with the rest. So the first section in rules and procedures has to do with administration. So this is fairly straightforward. It talks about the annual report that the board is required to make to the communities it serves by June of each year. Because this board didn't start until June of this year. We are envisioning that the first annual report will go to the respective councils in June of next year. Any comments or concerns regarding the annual report? No, hearing none. Great. The next item, the next procedure in the administration section has to do with complaints about police officers, the complaints director and the law enforcement complaints agency, about board members and the role of the inspector general. So this basically just talks about how complaints are dealt with respect to who they come from and who they're about, essentially is what this rule of procedure. And this is all quite prescriptive, pardon me, as outlined in the Act. Sorry, I should have paused. So just so that everyone knows, we've sort of created a standard template for this. So we have the procedure name, the section, the date it was created, the date it was revised, the next review date. We've included the applicable sections of legislation that have guided the development of the procedure, number of pages, and also C. So if there are other rules and procedures that sort of complement one, we reference that so that you can kind of flip and read between the two. So, so with respect to the complaints section, any comments, questions, or concerns? No? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. The next one has to do with records, including records management, retention, disclosure, and requests for documents. Again, we talk about not so much what the detachment board is, but what it isn't in this respect. It's not a local board or an institution based on the respective bodies of legislation. We talk about records, what they are, and we talk about location and so on and so forth. So sorry, I just get so excited about records because the clerk side of my brain always gets excited about records management and retention and all that fun stuff. So I've gone into a little more detail than I should have on this one. I'll pause and ask if there are any questions or concerns. You will note throughout the rules and procedures, in a few places we talk about an appendix. In that case, it's a form or something like that. So we didn't want to delay getting these to you. So those appendices will be added as we develop them, and certainly within the next few months. So I just didn't want you to think that we forgot about them. We just aren't quite there yet. But it's just a form or what have you to support the procedure. So yeah, any questions or comments on the records piece? No? Okay, great. I guess not everyone gets quite as excited as Mary and I do about record stuff, and that's okay. That means you're quite normal. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, thanks.
So that takes care of the administration section of the rules and procedures. The next section we move into is about the board itself, the detachment board. The first procedure has to do with what we're calling the administrative headquarters, support staff, and records location. So again, quite straightforward on this one. With respect to sort of how we've said the administrative headquarters will be here in Sioux Lookout. The administrator and the recording secretary will work out of here, and the records, the official records of the board will be held in Sioux Lookout as well. But of course, as you know, everyone gets copies of agendas, minutes, reports. So all of our vital records, if I can call them that, everyone on the board has access to them at any time. So any questions on that particular procedure? Oh, okay, great. Next one deals with appointments, the police record check, revocation of an appointment and replacing somebody new, the term, the ministerial appointment and term, folks who are ineligible based on the Act, vacancies in the first year, vacancy upon ineligibility, filling vacancies, and remuneration. So that we lumped all of those things together, including remuneration. So again, this sort of just talks about a lot of the stuff that is outlined in the legislation. And so there's nothing too innovative, I guess. The legislation, again, is quite prescriptive on a lot of this type of thing. So that's where we are on there. Any questions about that particular procedure? Okay, great. The next one is related but different, and this is the composition of the Sioux OPP Detachment Board. So we talk about the Sioux OPP Detachment area, or its catchment area, which includes more than Sioux Lookout and Pickle Lake. It also includes a number of First Nation communities. However, our understanding is that the Ministry of the Solicitor General has permitted the First Nations to opt out of participating on this board at their request. And so while the board is responsible for the entire detachment catchment area, the leadership in the First Nation communities that are part of the detachment have indicated that they don't wish to participate on the board at this time. So I just wanted to clarify, make sure everyone's on the same page with respect to that. Again, the composition of the board is prescribed by regulation. And again, this procedure just sort of fleshes that out or explains that. Any questions, comments, or concerns on composition? Okie doke. Hearing none. We'll move on to the next one. Next one has to deal with confidentiality and disclosure by resolution. So we define what confidentiality is. We do talk about that, things that are dealt with in a closed session are intended and need to be kept confidential. Obviously, if there is a reason to disclose something that was discussed in closed session, that should be done by resolution, is what we're proposing. Yeah, so that's fairly straightforward as well. Again, just sort of outlining what's in the Act and some leading practices when it comes to dealing with confidential matters. Any questions on that procedure? No? Great. Wow. Staff have done a great job on putting this together and anticipating the desire and needs of the board and doing an incredibly good job of scouring the legislation to make sure that we're capturing all of these procedures that are reflected in there. The next section talks about conflict of interest, its definition, and the requirement to disclose pecuniary interests. So we define what conflict of interest is and personal relationships. We speak to the procedure speaks to the declaration or the disclosure of any pecuniary interest and what that looks like and how that is to be completed. We have a form for that. That one is created and that one is in there already. Any comments, questions, or concerns respecting conflict of interest? Oh, okay, fantastic, great, thank you. All right, moving right along. Our next procedure deals with delegation of authority to create subcommittees and so on. So the board may, by bylaw, create a committee, a subcommittee, an ad hoc committee, whichever iteration it so wishes. And it does have the authority to delegate any of the board's powers under the Act to the committee. It also has the power to delegate power to an employee of the board who is not a member of the police service or to the chief of police. The legislation is a little unclear here. We are getting clarification if chief of police and detachment commander in this instance are interchangeable. In other instances in the Act, they are not. In this section, they may be. Again, I don't foresee a lot of requirement for this. However, there may be a requirement for committees just to work on certain projects or initiatives. So again, we do talk about, composition of committee and what that looks like, and so on. So any questions, comments, or concerns regarding delegation of authority? Okay. And again, as I mentioned at the outset, as we work with these rules and procedures, if we find they're not working for us or we need to tweak them, we can absolutely do that. They belong to the board, so the board can adjust them at its pleasure. All right. Next section is about elections, something else that the clerk side of my brain gets all lit up about. So this is the election of the chair and vice chair, if and when the board decides it wishes one, the conduct of the election, and the duties of the chair and vice chair. Again, a lot of this is sort of prescribed in terms of frequency and that kind of stuff of elections by the Act. And the rest of it, the duties of the chair and vice chair are also prescribed by the Act. So again, not a lot of room for creativity, but definitely a good documentation of what's required under the Act. Any questions respecting elections? Oh, all right. Very good. Name. The next procedure is the name. And so, of course, we just use what is provided for in the regulation, which is the Sioux OPP Detachment Board. And this is, it's a bit awkward because the board obviously doesn't just serve the community of Sioux Lookout, it serves the community of Sioux Lookout and Pickle Lake, but the detachment serves Sioux Lookout, Pickle Lake, and the 3 First Nations communities. So I think that's why, I think that basically they're saying, okay, we'll name it whatever the detachment is called. And so it's the Sioux Lookout Detachment. It just so happens to serve 5 communities in this case. So that's what they provided for in the regulation. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that topic? All right. Very good. We will stay as named until they rename us or give us other information, I suppose. Very good. Next section looks at onboarding of members. So the oath and affirmation, or oath or affirmation, pardon me, the code of conduct, training, records of training, orientation, information binders, and so on and so forth. We talk about that. Again, some of this is prescribed with respect to the oath, the code of conduct, and the mandatory training. The orientation program is optional. We recommend it. I know the last 2 meetings have sort of been orientation focused in some respects in terms of getting some of our legs underneath us, so the board has the ability to function. But we are actually proposing a bit of an orientation session for the September meeting, correct, Mary?
Yep.
And so we've sort of outlined some of the topics that we may look at during that orientation meeting. And yeah, so that sort of covers that section. Any comments or questions or concerns? No? Okay, great. Moving along. I'm looking at this on my screen so that my head isn't down all the time, so I just have to scroll along. Okay, our next procedure has to do with participation on other boards, committees, etc. So this is respecting a member serving on another board that deals with policing issues or policing governance. Obviously, members can serve on any number of boards and so on, but any that involve policing issues or policing matters, because of your role on this board, the recommendation is that serving on such a board should be approved by this board, as well as indicating whether or not the board is going to cover costs for attendance. So let's say, for example, there's an opening on the OAPSB board of directors, and one of the board members of the Sioux OPP Detachment board wishes to serve. Then that would be something that we would bring to the board and discuss. And if there's no objection, the board would pass a motion. We would clarify who pays for, travel for attending those meetings if they're in person, and that would get covered in the resolution as well. So if OAPSB covers your travel, great. We deal with it that way. If they only cover a portion of it, then we would look at what that would look like from a cost perspective, and the board would make decisions in that regard. Any questions on participation on other boards procedure? Oh, great, thank you. Next section, the next procedure rather, deals with liability, entering into contracts, suing and being sued, because you always got to look out for those types of things. So personal liability is covered under section 48 of the Act, which basically says that as long as the board is acting in good faith, you can't be held liable for your decisions. It also gives the board the authority to enter into contracts and agreements, and to sue and be sued in its own name. Again, the board's members are not personally liable for the board's contracts. The board would be liable for that itself. So, and this may come up elsewhere, but just on the issue of insurance and indemnification and risk management, we are continuing to look at insurance for the board. The sector has been scrambling a bit to try to find a solution for insurance for these new detachment boards. Again, given their uncertain legal status, I think that was part of the issue. We did receive communication just before we sent the agenda out from the OAPSB that they may have been able to source insurance for boards. So we will investigate that between now and the next meeting, and I will endeavor to bring a report to the board recommending an insurance option at the September meeting. Having said all that, are there any questions regarding personal liability, contracting, and those related matters, that procedure? No? Okay, great. Pardon me. The next procedure has to do with professional development, memberships, and conferences. So again, it is recommended that the board, in 2025, purchase a membership with the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards. The municipality of Sioux Lookout did purchase a membership for itself for this year, just so that we would have access to some of their resources and technical expertise. But going forward, it would probably be more appropriate that the board hold that membership as opposed to either of the communities. There are other types of organizations that the board may want to consider membership on, and my recommendation to the board is that, we look at membership in OAPSB in 2025, assess its value, and throughout 2025, also look at some of these other types of boards and make determinations as to whether or not membership is necessary or valuable. That would be my recommendation. So yeah, the policy speaks to attendance at meetings or conferences. It speaks to professional development. Again, budget and expense claims are covered as well. Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the procedure on professional development? Nope. Okay. How are we doing in terms of am I going too fast? Have I hit anything that folks haven't reviewed yet? No, looks like everyone's okay. All right, beautiful. We do have a procedure on remuneration, and we just sort of said, see the finance section on remuneration. So instead of putting it under the board, we put it under the finance section, but we just needed to have a placeholder in there so that the board wouldn't have to wonder, where do I find out what I get paid, and where do I find out about apportionment of the costs and billing statements and all that kind of stuff. So that's under the financial section, which will be coming up in a bit. Any concerns with that procedure? Just saying that it's found elsewhere, essentially. Oh, that's good. All right. Next up, roles and responsibilities. The role of the board, its responsibilities in relation to community safety and well-being plans and prescribed standards. So once again, most of this is gleaned from the Act and/or regulations. But if there are any questions regarding that, or comments or concerns, happy to try to address them. Okay, very good. Again, the next procedure with respect to support staff, the administrator, recording secretary, and the job descriptions. So we're contemplating a board administrator, a deputy board administrator, and a recording secretary. So among staff, we've sort of self-assigned those those duties so far, in discussion with Linda, of course, from Pickle Lake. So for now, I'm happy if the board will have me serve as the administrator, Linda as the deputy administrator, and Tiffany as our recording secretary. Since we're all employees of the municipalities that the board serves, there's no additional remuneration or anything like that. We outline the duties and responsibilities of those positions. Yeah, so any comments, questions, or concerns regarding support staff? Okay, very good. Okay, moving right along. So now we move into our communications section of the rules and procedures involving both external and internal communications. So the first procedure under this section is the board's spokesperson and media that deals with the board spokesperson and media relations. We're recommending, of course, that the official spokesperson be the chair, and the vice chair, if we choose to elect one, would act in the chair's absence. It talks about what's appropriate to speak to, that the administrator or deputy administrator sort of acts as a liaison. We found that having sort of a staff person sort of gather information from the media and then deliver that to the chair, work with the chair on responses, and then provide that back to the media seems to be a process that works fairly well. And so essentially that's what we're recommending. We are also suggesting that the board administrator, if it's just factual information, that we just answer those questions, if it's not already found on our website. Let's see. Yeah, we talk about media releases, we talk about news conferences, information that's available to the media, and how. Yeah, any questions on that section with respect to spokesperson and media relations? Nope, sounds good. Very good. Great. Our next section, or procedure, pardon me, deals with social media. So right now, we don't have any social media specific to the board. Members, obviously you may have your own social media accounts. If so, not recommended that you deal with detachment board stuff on your personal social media accounts. That would be something that we would suggest that we deal with, at the board level and through the website at this time. If the board does at some point decide it wants to create a social media presence, whether that be Facebook or X or LinkedIn or any Instagram, any of the litany of different social media channels that are out there. That's something we can absolutely talk about in the future. But for now, we've met our primary requirement, which is with respect to the website and the information that's required to be posted on there. So we've met that for now. So any questions, comments, or concerns regarding social media? Oh, okay, very good. The next one deals with the web page or website and its accessibility. Right now we are basically we're hosting it on the municipality of Sioux website, but it does have its own URL, which Pickle Lake can add to their website, just so that everyone sort of gets directed to the same landing page. So this policy talks about what we're going to share on the website. Again, some of this is prescribed, some of it is just good practice. Yeah, so we will, any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the website? In the future, the board may choose to develop its own website in its entirety. That's a standalone, that's not a page on the municipality of Sioux site. That's certainly up to the board. But for now, we are meeting our requirements and leading practices when it comes to being open and transparent with respect to usage of a website. Any questions on that one? Okay, very good. Next procedure has to do with correspondence to the board. So this essentially outlines how correspondence will be dealt with. Pretty straightforward. Any questions or concerns with respect to correspondence? Okay, very good. Next procedure has to deal with the request for information from the board, information sharing with and among the board, and response times. It talks about how information can be requested, how we respond to requests for information, and response time expectations. Any comments or concerns respecting that procedure? No? Okay, very good. All right, and then that concludes our communications section of the rules and procedures. Now move into finance, the finance section. Am I good to just continue on? Yeah, okay, great. So the first procedure here deals with accounts payable. It details how invoices will be processed. It identifies that the treasurer for the board, as outlined in the partnership agreement, is the treasurer for the municipality, that they'll also serve as a treasurer for the detachment board. We talk about invoice processing, payment terms, and processing, vendor management, record keeping, reconciliation, and internal controls. All pretty standard stuff when it comes to accounts payable. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding that? Okay, very good, thank you. Moving right along, the next one is accounts receivable with respect to the quarterly statement and billing. So what's important to note is that it's not anticipated the board will have accounts receivable other than the quarterly statement or billing to the municipalities, possibly grants in the future. If needed, we can develop a more complex procedure in the future. Again, the treasurer of the municipality of Sioux will be the treasurer for the detachment board. So this procedure talks about how it will work, how the quarterly statements will be issued, and so on. Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding accounts receivable? All right, very good. And of course, this was also developed in accordance with the partnership agreement, which also talks about how billing statements will work. So this procedure was developed based on what was outlined in the partnership agreement. Next section is donations. In this respect, at this point, staff through this procedure are recommending that the board not make donations. There are many good causes, but given that the board doesn't generate a lot of its own revenue and is relying on revenues from the municipality of Sioux and the township of Pickle Lake to operate, any donation requests would probably be more aptly directed to those communities' councils. That's not to say, of course, that if there are opportunities to partner with different entities to do certain types of programming or whatever, that's different. That wouldn't be considered a donation. That would be a partnership and a programming piece. But with respect to donations at this point, the recommendation and essentially the policy suggests that the board just doesn't make any. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Okie doke. All right. Next section talks about the estimate and the budget, how disputes, if they arise, are addressed with respect to budgets and estimates. So it outlines the process of how that works. Again, some of that is prescribed under the Act. Very similar, well, it is essentially the process that we followed this year, whereby the board develops its budget. It then presents that to the respective councils, who then need to determine whether or not they're going to accept that and fund on a 50-50 cost share basis. If the councils can't agree, and if there's concerns between the board and the councils, there is that would be dealt with through arbitration. We talk about what's included in the budget in terms of the different categories. We talk about remuneration, surplus deficit, which again we don't anticipate finding ourselves in. References of applicable legislation. Apportionment of costs. Again, most of this has been dealt with perhaps at a higher level. This kind of gets more into the details, but this sort of talks about everything that was sort of outlined in the partnership agreement as well, with respect to the financial matters, the budget, the allocation of costs, the reimbursement of costs, and so on and so forth. Any questions on that procedure? All right. Very good. The next procedure deals with expense claims for travel, training, and mileage. So again, we look at the scope, we talk about budget, authorization to travel and how that works, the procedures associated with it, travel expense advances if requested, per diems and travel time, the reimbursement of expenses, the amounts that are allocated for meals and mileage, accommodations, and so on. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding expense claims procedure? Expense claims procedure. Oh, okay. Looks pretty straightforward. Very good. Moving along. Financial standards is the next procedure. And this essentially is just saying that the board and the treasurer of the board shall follow Canadian financial standards established by by PSAB, the Public Sector Accounting Board, in all financial activities. We're recommending PSAB just because that's what the municipalities follow. It's a format that will be familiar to at least the elected officials on the board, and so it's pretty standard for public sector bodies, which the board is. So that's what's being recommended. Any comments, questions, or concerns? No? Okay, very good. The next procedure deals with grants, applying with grants and so on. We do have a note on this one that, again, we're still trying to sort out the legal status of the board. So the board's eligibility to apply for grants is still yet to be determined. But essentially, this procedure deals with once we establish that the board is able to apply for grants, it sort of talks about responsibilities and procedures for applying. We've even included some examples of grants that the board may be eligible to apply under, just as a reference. Any questions or concerns about grants? Okay, very good. The next section deals with remuneration for the provincial appointee, the community member appointees, the council appointees. We reference legislation, the process for approval, the enforcement of costs, the billing statements and payments. So again, there's some overlap and and cross-reference to the earlier policy that we discussed on this, or procedure, pardon me. So again, we talk about the remuneration for the various members on the board and how that works and what that will be, as well as for the community appointees and the council member appointees. Again, we sort of went through this and talked about it a little bit as part of the partnership agreement, as well as when we submitted the budget to our respective councils for the 2024 year. But just in case, are there any questions with respect to remuneration? I guess the key takeaway is right now it's $2,000 a year for the provincial appointee once we get one, and the community appointees, no additional remuneration for the council member appointees, and it's paid in the fourth quarter of each year. And it can be reviewed annually, but right now the intention is that the $2,000 a year that rate would remain in effect for this term, which would end on November 16th, 2026. The term of the board coincides with the term of council. So, okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns on remuneration? All right, very good. And finally, we're moving into, I believe, the last section of our rules and procedures, which is information technology. So we have sort of just the procedure here just deals with various matters. So the support services, how they're being provided, who's being provided, who is providing them, pardon me. It describes what those support services look like. And again, this may evolve and change depending on the needs of the board over time, but that's sort of where things stand for right now. Any comments, questions, or concerns? No, very good. Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry. That was our IT section, just the one, and then of course meetings of the board. So the first procedure under the meeting section deals with an absence of a rule or procedure with regard to a procedural matter. So if it's not otherwise addressed here, we're suggesting that we'll just follow the procedure as set out in the Municipality of Sioux procedure bylaw. Most of the common procedural matters we do have addressed here in the rules and procedures. However, if there's something that isn't addressed, I'll be honest, I said the municipality of Sioux Lookout's procedure bylaw just because that's the one I'm more familiar with. I open the door to say, well, no, maybe it should be Pickle Lake procedure bylaw. Totally open on that. I'm prepared to learn it. Yeah, leave that open for the board to have input on if you have any concerns about that. When was your procedure bylaw last updated, Linda? Do you recall?
We are actually going through the procedural bylaws.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. Maybe Pickle Lakes, when they adopt their new one, will far surpass Sioux Lookouts, and then we might need to review this this procedure for the board, and we may change Sioux Lookout to Pickle Lake there as
Yeah,
the
I don't know
newest,
about that one,
tiniest
Brian.
version. Again,
I'm
for
learning
now,
lots from you.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. So yeah, for now we'll stick with Sioux Lookouts, and that can change, of course, at the will of the board. All right. The next procedure under the meeting section deals with adjournment or the length or duration of meetings. We're proposing that they be no longer than 3 hours. However, if they could then be extended by 1 more hour, but that would require a 2/3 majority. And then there would be no extensions beyond 4 hours if the board doesn't dispatch with its business on the agenda within 4 hours. Then we would just schedule a subsequent meeting to deal with the rest of the business. Is what we're proposing. Any comments, concerns, thoughts on that one? All righty. Very good. The next procedure under meetings deals with agendas. Compilation, materials, deadline, order of business, additions, sort of cover all of that stuff in here. We also include a sample agenda. And we also speak to a closed session when the board is permitted to discuss items in closed session, and so on, and how that'll be dealt with. One thing that we didn't address in this section, but in conversations with our recording secretary, it occurs to me that if the board does need to go into closed session at any particular meeting, we will have to sort of send 2 Zoom links. One will be for the open session and one will be for the closed, because the open session obviously is recorded and streamed and is available to be watched at any time on the YouTube channel, whereas closed session can't be. And so with the limitations of technology, apparently once we start streaming a meeting, we can't stop and restart streaming it again. So that's why we would have to sort of adjourn the open session meeting and then log in via a different link for closed session. So if we find a cleaner way to deal with that, and we will monitor the technology, and if it improves, we will find something that's a little less clunky. But for now, essentially, that's what would need to happen for our virtual meetings. Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding agendas and the agenda process? No? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to the next procedure under meetings, which deals with attendance and absences. So we talk about absences, about regrets and sending regrets, and so on. Pretty straightforward and standard process there. Again, any comments, questions, or concerns? Okay. Very good. Next section talks about, I spoke to it really briefly previously, but closed meetings in session or in-camera meetings or sessions. when they may be closed to the public. So again, this is fairly prescriptive. The Act says when the board may go into closed session, and the subject matter that may be discussed in closed session. So quite prescriptive in that regard, as is, the Municipal Act and many others. But we have captured all of that in this procedure. We talk about, we talk about agendas for closed meetings, as well as education and training sessions may be held in closed if certain conditions are satisfied. So that's essentially this one talks about the rules for closed meetings. Any questions, comments, or concerns on that one? Okay. Location of meetings is our next procedure under meetings, under the meeting section. So as has been discussed previously by the board, it's not really practical, time efficient, or cost effective to meet in person. So we'll be meeting virtually. We do have a procedure in here about virtual meetings, so we'll review that. Any concerns about that in terms of holding our meetings virtually? I think everyone's pretty much on the same page there. Great. The next procedure talks about minutes and the record of meetings. So again, pretty boilerplate stuff here. That we keep minutes, that staff record without note or comment, the resolutions, decisions, and other proceedings. The recording secretary prepares the minutes. The format, we've attached sort of what we've used for the first meeting, and that'll sort of be the format unless the board wishes to direct changes. Approved minutes, of course, will be signed by the chair and the administrator and posted on the board's webpage, and forwarded to the township of Pickle Lake and the municipality of Sioux, as well as the detachment commander. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding minutes? Oh, okay, very good. We provide the sample. The next procedure under meetings has to do with notice of open meetings or regular open meetings, the timing and the contents of the notice. So again, pretty straightforward. Some of it's prescribed under the legislation, but basically, yeah, these are just the basic notice requirements for the board meetings. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Essentially, what it says is we provide notice a week in advance. We can provide notice more than a week in advance, but we just wouldn't attach the agenda if it's more than a week in advance, because the agenda likely wouldn't be available yet. There we go. Any questions, comments, or concerns on notice? Okay, very good. The next section talks about open meetings, i.e. that meetings must be open to the public. So again, that's prescribed under section 44. And the other procedure about closed sessions describes when we can go in and how we deal with closed session matters. Pretty straightforward. Any questions on that one? Oh, okay. The next procedure under meetings deals with quorum. Again, very straightforward. A quorum is a majority of the members, so three members constitutes quorum. Quorum is required in order for the meeting to proceed. Okay. Meetings, regular meetings, and the frequency. So this again just talks about how the Act prescribes that the board shall meet at least four times a year, And just that one of the things the board may wish to consider when it's planning its meeting schedule, we've already done this for 2025, but when planning its meeting schedule, that try to meet sometime around May so that direction can be given to staff with respect to the annual report that has to be submitted from the board to the two councils. Just thought that might work timing wise. Any questions on meeting frequency? And of course, we can the board may call special meetings when it needs to, which is the next procedure. Talks about special meetings, how they can be called, notice, respecting special meetings. Again, pretty straightforward. Any questions or concerns? No? Okay, very good. The next procedure deals with virtual meetings being live stream video recorded, posting of the web link, access for people to view the meeting, posting of notices, agendas, and other options. So again, we talked about virtual meetings and why they're necessary for this board. It references quorum. Again, some of the stuff is covered previously, but the posting of the notice, the agendas, and the web links so that members of the public can view and be informed of the board's deliberations. About the meetings being live streamed and video recorded so that people can watch it live or they can tune into YouTube and watch it at their viewing pleasure afterwards. We also talk about another option for meeting format or other options, which would be in person or hybrid meetings, which would be some people meet in person, some people meet virtually. Those options are there, but to exercise them, we'd need a 2/3 vote of the board and proper notice to exercise those meeting options if it's ever necessary or warranted. Any questions on the method, I guess, of meeting? Oh, okay, very good, great. And our last section has to do with miscellaneous procedures. Again, some of this is just so the board is aware. So the first one talks about duties of a police officer. So in providing input into policing, it's relevant for board members to understand the duties of a police officer. So that's what this procedure does. It includes the definition, the duties, just as basic information for the board. Again, all very much prescribed under the legislation. Okay, any questions on that one? No, okay, good. The next one deals with the Ontario Police Arbitration and Adjudication Commission. Again, very much prescribed. This just outlines what the legislation says with respect to Ontario Police Arbitration and Adjudication Commission, what their role is, how we engage with them if necessary. Any questions on that? All right, very good. So now we have our rules and procedures about our rules and procedures. So this section is what that deals with. So the first one talks about applicability. So who they apply to, who these rules and procedures apply to, and how. So that's, again, pretty straightforward. Essentially it applies to the operation and all proceedings of the board, and that's why we've adopted them. So everyone knows how we work and operate. The next one deals with future rules and procedures, which basically just recognizes that there may be a need for additional rules and procedures in the future. And if so, sort of talks about how we will go about addressing that and bringing those forward. Okay, the next procedure is rules and procedures, review, location and maintenance of the master binder. So we talk about the review. We'll do one in 2026. And then we propose, every 3 years thereafter. So at least it gets reviewed once a term, is essentially the goal. The approval process for any of the rules and procedures that are amended, and how that gets updated and circulated, and that the master binder will stay at the headquarters. But of course, everyone has copies of everything. That again is pretty straightforward. The next procedure deals with severability. So again, if we ever get questioned on any of this, or someone takes us to court and the court says, you know what, your procedure respecting Section 3 of your procedure respecting accounts payable is not valid, well, then essentially everything else stays the same, and that section just gets stricken until we can figure out how to fix it. But essentially, everything remains as is unless a court says it's a no-go. That's essentially what that procedure says.
Yeah.
The next one talks about suspension or waiving the rules and procedures. So we're just saying that the board won't do that unless it has a 2/3 majority. And that if it does happen, it's only for the rules and procedures that are stated, and only during the meeting at which the motion is approved. Again, pretty standard stuff. And okay, so the last section is about local policies. So the Act does talk about the fact that a detachment board can develop local policies. There's not a lot of wiggle room in this respect for the board, but there is a little bit. So the first part of this we include an explanation of what local policies are, their requirements respecting creating local policies. So it can't be our policies cannot be inconsistent with the strategic plan prepared by the minister, any policies established by the minister under Section 60 of the Act, any procedures established by the commissioner, or the local action plan prepared by the detachment commander. Again, local policies can't relate to actual police business or how they conduct investigations or those types of things. Any local policies must not require a member of the OPP to do something or refrain from doing something that would be inconsistent with their duties. So we cover all of those things about what we can and can't do. The detachment, the Act talks about the detachment commander does need to comply with any local policies that the board does pass. If there's a dispute, it talks about how that's dealt with between the board and the detachment commander, respecting local policies. Okay. So that covers that one. I'm not sure if there's any questions on that. Again, it just sort of explains what local policies are and how they work. So staff is recommending one local policy for just to get things started. And it's entitled Reporting of Serious Incidents by Detachment Commander and Reports by Detachment Commander. So this is essentially what's being recommended is that if there is a serious incident that occurs either in Sioux or Pickle Lake, the detachment commander shall notify the board administrator or the deputy administrator, depending on where the incident took place. So if it takes place, if there's a serious incident in Sioux Lookout, I would be notified. If there's a serious incident in Pickle, Linda would be notified. And then as soon as possible, the administrator or the deputy administrator would notify the board chair of the incident and inform the mayor of the community which is happening. We include some examples of what serious incidents may be. Weapons-related incidents, occurrences, or active shooters, serious assaults, serious occurrences on municipal or township property, or any other serious occurrence that may generate concern on the part of the members of the public. So this isn't necessarily a new a new practice. It's just sort of codifying, if you will, or putting into a policy, sort of what happens, or at least what happens here in Sioux. I'm not sure how often it happens in Pickle. I'm not sure how often there are serious incidents in Pickle. Yeah, we do have a relationship with the detachment commander, who does normally give a heads up if there is a serious incident. And this is just essentially ensuring that we put this as a local policy so that the board can be notified as well. Because in the small towns that we live in, bad news travels especially fast, and it's always nice to hear about these things from the source and get the correct information, as opposed to hearing hearing it through the grapevine, and it's 3 versions old, and there's been some extra information added that may not be factual. So this essentially is just to ensure that the board gets information about serious occurrences early, and to ensure that it's accurate. So that's the purpose, or the intent behind that one local policy. And that takes us to the end of that particular report. I know I asked all the way through if there were questions and comments. I will ask again, just in case there's anything that folks have been thinking about as I've been talking for the last hour and 10 minutes. My apologies. I promise that things will change, and it's not always going to be about Brian talking at meetings. I promise. Okay. If there aren't any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the rules and procedures and the one local policy, I think at this point we would request that the following motion be put to the board, that the Sioux Detachment Board approves, adopts, and implements the rules and procedures and local policy as presented at the August 8th, 2024 Detachment Board meeting. Madam Chair, I'll hand it back over to you to request a mover and seconder and to do the vote. Oh, I think you're on mute. Sorry, Darlene.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right, so anyway, the motion that was just read by Brian, we need a mover and a seconder. So who would like to move that
I'll
motion?
move. John moves. I move.
Bob, will move. Seconder. I'll second. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. That was quite the
Yeah, my apologies. I tried to do it as quickly and painlessly as I could, but sometimes these things are, yeah. Oh, and sorry, could you just ask for a vote on that one too, just so that we have that for the minutes? Sorry.
Okay. All in favor? Show of hands. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So then that brings us to number 8, which is the next meeting date for which is suggested for Tuesday, September 24th, 2 p.m. I believe there was an invitation that was sent out, and it's on my calendar, so that would be the date, or it should be the date on your calendars. All right, and then now we are at number 9, the motion to adjourn, and so we'll need a mover, seconder for that one. Everybody,
Move.
okay, John moves, seconder,
Well, second.
okay, Bob seconds, okay, John and then Bob, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll see you at the next meeting, I guess, in
Oh,
September.
can we get a vote on that one too?
Oh, sorry. All in favor? Yes, okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
okay.
Thank you,
Have a good,
everyone.
You will see
have a
you.
good August.
Yeah.
Oh, and Darlene, if